Hi, this is Daniel again. I serve as a spokesperson for Nehemiah Reset. Today, I wanted to explore how Christians might look at the Minneapolis protests as an opportunity to let them know about Jesus. The streets of Minneapolis have become a battleground in recent months, with liberal protesters clashing violently with immigration and customs enforcement. You see, officers attempting to arrest criminal immigrants. What distinguishes Minneapolis from other major cities where ICE operates is not merely the presence of protests, but their intensity, organization, and the sheer number of participants. For Christians seeking to evangelize in this charged environment, understanding the dynamics at play is crucial before attempting to bridge the ideological divide that separates those enforcing immigration law from those opposing it. The Christian approach to evangelism has always required contextual understanding, meeting people where they are, speaking their language, and addressing their concerns before introducing the transformative message of the gospel. In Minneapolis, this means grappling with unique local factors that have transformed routine immigration enforcement into a flashpoint for broader cultural and political conflicts. This video will explore these factors, examine the funding sources behind the protests, analyze the role of local officials, consider the impact of recent fraud revelations, and ultimately provide a framework for Christians to effectively evangelize those protesting IC operations. First, let's try to understand the Minneapolis protest phenomenon. Minneapolis has long been recognized as one of America's most progressive cities, with a political culture that prides itself on inclusivity and social justice advocacy. This progressive identity has deep roots in the state's history, from Minnesota's early support for civil rights to its recent implementation of sanctuary policies. However, the intensity of current protests exceeds what might be expected from even a traditionally liberal community. Several historical factors contribute to this phenomenon. Minneapolis experienced significant demographic shifts in the early 2000s, with large immigrant communities establishing themselves in the Twin Cities. The city's reputation for welcoming newcomers attracted both legal immigrants and undocumented individuals, creating complex social dynamics that have only intensified as federal immigration enforcement has become more stringent. The 2020 killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis further galvanized activist networks, establishing protest infrastructure and experience that has been redirected toward new causes, including opposition to ICE operations. When compared to other major cities where ICE operates, such as Chicago, Los Angeles, or New York, Minneapolis shows distinct patterns in both protest scale and intensity. While these other cities experience demonstrations against ICE, Minneapolis protests are characterized by 1. Higher participant-to-resident ratios. 2. Greater frequency of direct confrontations with law enforcement. 3. More sophisticated organization and coordination. 4. Stronger cross-movement alliances connecting immigration issues with other social justice causes. Several factors explain these differences. Minneapolis has a uniquely high concentration of nonprofit organizations per capita, many of which are now involved in organizing or supporting protests. The city's compact geography makes mobilization easier than in more sprawling metropolitan areas. Additionally, Minnesota's political landscape, currently dominated by Democratic Farmer Labor Party, DFL, officials at the state level, creates an environment where protesters feel more emboldened than in states with mixed or Republican leadership. The evangelical Christians seeking to engage protesters must first understand the psychological motivations driving their participation. Research into protest movements suggests several key factors. 1. Moral conviction. Many protesters genuinely believe they're standing on the right side of history, opposing what they perceive as unjust enforcement of immigration laws. This moral certainty creates a powerful sense of purpose that can be resistant to contrary viewpoints. 2. Community identity. Participation in protests has become a marker of social identity within certain Minneapolis circles. Being present at demonstrations signals alignment with community values and can provide a sense of belonging. 3. Efficacy beliefs. Unlike some protest movements that feel hopeless, Minneapolis protesters often believe their actions can directly influence policy outcomes, given the city's political leanings. 4. Emotional contagion. The intensity of protest creates emotional feedback loops where participants' outrage and determination are amplified through collective experience. Understanding these psychological drivers is essential for Christians who wish to evangelize effectively. The gospel message must be framed in a way that respects these motivations while redirecting them towards spiritual truths. The scale and sophistication of Minneapolis protests suggest significant financial backing. While exact funding sources can be difficult to trace completely, several patterns emerge through examination of public records and organizational disclosures. 1. National Progressive Networks. Organizations such as the ACLU, Center for Constitutional Rights, and various immigrant rights groups have established Minnesota chapters that receive substantial national funding. These organizations provide legal support, training, and resources that enable sustained protest activities. 2. Local nonprofit ecosystem. Minnesota has one of the nation's most robust nonprofit sectors per capita, with many organizations receiving funding from private foundations dedicated to social justice causes. The Minneapolis Foundation, Bush Foundation, and other local philanthropies have historically supported immigrant rights initiatives that now align with protest efforts. 3. Political campaign infrastructure. Some protest coordination appears to leverage networks established during recent political campaigns, including the 2020 elections and various local races. Staff and volunteers from these campaigns have reportedly been involved in organizing demonstrations. 4. Crowdfunding mechanisms. Digital platforms have enabled decentralized funding streams that are difficult to track completely. GoFundMe campaigns and other fundraising efforts specifically support arrested protesters and legal defense funds. While some local businesses have publicly distanced themselves from the protests, others have provided indirect support through 1. In-kind donations, food, water, medical supplies, and meeting space provided by sympathetic businesses. 2. Employee policies, companies allowing paid time off for protest participation. 3. Public relations support, marketing and communications firms assisting with messaging and media strategy. This business support, while not always direct financial backing of protest organizations, creates an ecosystem that enables sustained demonstration activities. Some evidence suggests external funding influences, though these connections are often difficult to document definitively. 1. Transnational networks. Connections to international human rights organizations that may provide funding or strategic guidance. 2. Political ideology export. Groups associated with specific political philosophies that view Minneapolis as a strategic location for advancing broader agendas. The Christian evangelist should be aware of these funding dynamics, not to dismiss protester sincerity, but to understand that some participants may be influenced by financial incentives or professional organizing rather than purely grassroots conviction. Minnesota's political landscape provides crucial context for understanding official resistance to IC operations. The state has implemented several policies that limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. 1. Sanctuary state legislation. Minnesota has enacted laws restricting state and local agencies from cooperating with IC detainers without judicial warrants. 2. Local ordinances. Minneapolis and surrounding municipalities have adopted specific policies limiting police involvement in immigration enforcement. 3. Legal challenges. The State Attorney General's office has joined lawsuits challenging federal immigration policies and enforcement practices. These policies create an environment where IC must operate with limited local support, increasing tension during enforcement actions. The resistance from Minnesota officials reflects both ideological conviction and political calculation. 1. Electoral demographics. Recent elections have demonstrated strong support among key constituencies for immigrant rights and opposition to aggressive enforcement. 2. Party alignment. Minnesota's DFL-dominated political establishment has aligned itself with National Democratic Party positions critical of IC enforcement strategies. 3. Interest group pressure. Powerful advocacy organizations have demonstrated ability to mobilize voters and influence primary elections, creating political incentives for officials to oppose ICE operations. Beyond formal policies, institutional factors contribute to official resistance. 1. Law enforcement culture. Some local police departments have cultivated cultures that view cooperation with ICE as contrary to community policing principles. 2. Bureaucratic delays. Administrative processes have been implemented that slow or complicate ICE's access to information or facilities. 3. Resource allocation. Limited resources have been directed towards supporting ICE operations, effectively creating practical barriers to enforcement. For the Christian evangelist, this political context creates both challenges and opportunities. The opposition of officials may validate protesters' sense of moral righteousness, making them more resistant to alternative perspectives. However, it also creates openings for Christians to demonstrate countercultural obedience to authority while maintaining compassion for immigrants. Another consideration is the impact of fraud scandals and their impact on protest dynamics. Minnesota has recently been rocked by several high-profile fraud cases that have indirectly affected the immigration debate. 1. Feeding Our Future scandal, a massive fraud scheme involving $250 million in federal child nutrition funds, with significant connections to immigrant communities and organizations that also support protest activities. 2. COVID-19 relief fraud. Widespread fraudulent claims for pandemic assistance programs, with disproportionate involvement by individuals and organizations connected to immigrant communities. 3. Nonprofit mismanagement. Several organizations that previously provided social services to immigrants have been implicated in financial improprieties. So, how have fraud revelations shaped protest narratives? These fraud cases have complex effects on the protest movement. 1. Defensive posturing. Some protesters have adopted defensive stances, dismissing fraud revelations as politically motivated attacks on immigrant communities. 2. Movement fragmentation. The fraud cases have created tensions within immigrant advocacy communities, with some organizations distancing themselves from implicated groups. 3. Narrative complexity. The intersection of legitimate immigration concerns with criminal activities has complicated public discourse, making it harder for protesters to maintain simple narratives. 4. Involvement of local officials. Local officials, the governor and the Minneapolis mayor both seem to be involved in these fraud actions, either directly or indirectly. So, what are some opportunities for Christian engagement? For Christians seeking to evangelize, these fraud revelations create potential conversation starters. 1. Moral framework. The Christian emphasis on integrity and honesty provide the natural entry point to discuss ethical concerns beyond the immediate immigration debate. 2. Justice principles. Biblical concepts of justice that apply equally to immigration enforcement and community fraud can bridge apparent contradictions. 3. Restorative approaches and redemption narratives. The Christian concept of redemption offers a powerful framework for engaging with both the complexities of immigration enforcement and the moral failures exposed by fraud scandals. Rather than taking a purely political stance, Christians can introduce a narrative of transformation that transcends the binary positions dominating the Minneapolis debate. The gospel's message of forgiveness and restoration speaks directly to the current moment. For those protesting perceived injustices in immigration enforcement, the Christian perspective can acknowledge legitimate concerns while pointing toward a higher justice that begins with individual transformation. For immigrant communities feeling targeted, the biblical narrative of exile and return resonates deeply, offering spiritual resources that transcend political solutions. Evangelism starts with understanding the worldview of liberal protesters. Effective evangelism requires comprehending the underlying worldview of those protesting ICE operations. While individual motivations vary, several common themes emerge. 1. Imminent justice. Many protesters operate from a framework that sees justice primarily in terms of earthly systems and outcomes, rather than divine judgment or eternal consequences. 2. Collective responsibility. The liberal worldview often emphasizes systemic oppression over individual sin, creating a different understanding of moral responsibility than traditional Christian teaching. 3. Human-centered solutions. There is typically greater confidence in human institutions and social movements to bring about meaningful change, rather than reliance on divine intervention. 4. Moral relativism. While passionately committed to certain causes, the broader liberal worldview often embraces moral relativism that conflicts with biblical absolutes. Christians engaging these worldviews must recognize that they are not simply presenting alternative political opinions, but offering a fundamentally different understanding of reality, justice, and human nature. In the next video in this series, we explore some of the ways that Christians can evangelize the people involved in these protests. To watch more videos like this one, you can go to our website at nehemiahreset.org, to our rumble.com or youtube.com channels. We publish new videos weekly. You can also sign up to receive our weekly new video list by going to nehemiahreset.org/email and sign up for our weekly newsletter. To help our channel, please like and subscribe so that more people can see these important videos. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Are you looking for a limitless supply of insightful reads to expand your mind and transform your life? Look no further than Nehemiah Reset's ebook library, where knowledge meets inspiration at nehemiahreset.org ebook. Go there today to discover a wealth of valuable resources to help you on your personal and professional journey to build a biblical worldview. Learn more about the Bible and how culture is impacting your worldview. Again, the ebook library is located at nehemiahreset.org ebook. Hope to see you soon. My name is Andrew. I am one of the spokespersons for Nehemiah Reset. The prior video was sponsored by Nehemiah Reset, a 501c3. Our mission is to assist Christians in developing a biblical worldview as it pertains to relevant cultural and biblical issues. We seek to inform Christ's followers, equip them, and mobilize them in action to vote for their biblical values and actively engage in our We are also committed to help Christians and non-believers to develop a better biblical view. Nehemiah Reset produces videos and ebooks to assist members of the church in developing a biblical worldview when it comes to cultural issues. We produce videos on key topics like public school indoctrination, the woke agenda, sex education, equity and inclusion, climate change, immigration, religious freedom, and much, much more. To learn more about Nehemiah Reset or to watch our latest videos, go to our website at nehemiahreset.org or our rumble.com channel. We produce 2 to 3 videos every week. To get a weekly list of our latest videos, sign up for our weekly newsletter by going to nehemiahreset.org/email and subscribe. You can support our website by liking our videos, subscribing to our channels, or helping us reach more people through tax-exempt donations. Thanks for your help in growing God's kingdom and bringing more people to Christ. Thank you for your support and help. Come back again soon. Have a great day.